Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it is September 4th of 2020. I think I'm going to move this thing again. Oops, this thing doesn't want to, I think I'm going to move that. I can't see what you're saying, but I think I'm going to move that someplace. Let's see. The Russian vaccine generated antibodies. That's what I guess the Russians are saying. And of course, I guess scientists are saying that doesn't mean anything unless you go to phase 3 trial testing, which I'm not sure exactly how much, but I think it's like 10,000 people it has to be tested on. I just don't trust this evidence that Russia has a vaccine because they cut a whole bunch of, in the start type of testing and everything, and I wouldn't want to be the first people to try it. The vaccine, or the virus vaccine, apparently is out, and I don't know if it's available at my local Walgreens yet or not, but I will take that, of course, that vaccine. I never used to take flu vaccines or things like that, but a few years ago I did start doing that because of my age. I'll be 80 here in a few months. Someplace on here, I guess it's right here. It says here that the vaccination for this virus, we shouldn't expect it till maybe the middle of 2021. That sounds more realistic. I know we're all hoping that something, a breakthrough or something happens. Unfortunately, we can't trust anything that President Trump or that he's putting out. That's unfortunate. Really, you want to be able, when the president, you want somebody who's a leader and who's looking out after, your benefits, and you want to be able to depend on the information that you're getting at that level. And unfortunately, we definitely cannot depend on anything that he says. You have to, anyway. I applied, by the way, I'm not here in Texas. I believe at age 65, you can request an absent, or not an absent, request a ballot because of your age. And I have done that. I logged into the site and requested a ballot. I haven't received it yet. But I don't want to get out and stand in line. I've never, like I worked hospital security for 30 years, I never really was worried. I took universal precautions, but never really was worried. But now at age 80, with the medical conditions that I have, with the way I feel, I don't want to risk getting the flu or this current virus. So, but like that 30 years that I worked hospital security, I did come down one time with pneumonia. But that was because I was just totally exhausted. They had I was working then I worked at numerous hospitals over the years, but this research medical center that I was working at, they had a shift for a while that you worked 3 midnight shifts and you worked 2 day shifts. And I think when they started that up, I think there was one person ahead of me. I mean, one person did it before I did. Maybe 2, but I don't think so. I think there was one person that did it before I did, and then he didn't do it very long, and it was really hard. And then I did it, and I was totally exhausted on the midnight shift. I was just having a hell of a time just having to fight to stay awake. I mean, it was just terrible. And then when I worked the day shift, you know, I'd work three midnight shifts and then 2 day shifts. It was just horrible. And I came, I got sick. I missed, which I don't normally do. I missed a few days because of illness. And finally, I was at the hospital, and I was just on the midnight shift, and I was just thought I was going to die. I was just so tired and so sick, and I working there. If you wanted to go to, like the emergency room, if you're working, well, then your supervisor had to approve or whatever you going, and I told my supervisor, I have to go. I'm going to the emergency room, and he says, well, you know, I'll have to give it. I said, no, I'm timing out. Wasn't time for me to time out. I'm going and hit the time clock. I'm timing out. I'm no longer at work. And I went to the emergency room. And then they said, you have, pneumonia. And it was around Christmas. Yeah, it was Christmas time and not long before that, my wife of 12 years had divorced me. We had 4 children. And I had the 4 children. I mean, she wanted them and she took them, and then I don't want to badmouth her, but she called me and said, well, anyway, she brought the kids over, and it was Christmas time, and then I moved. Because when I got divorced, I moved in with my mother. I was like 40 years old, moved in with my mother. Oh, and then ended up with the 4 kids turned over to me. And so I got a mobile home in a nice mobile home park. Now, it wasn't a great, mobile home, but it was it was a nice mobile home park. And so we moved into there. And, I had brought the beds and stuff over. Whatever I had, I'd brought over, but I couldn't get the beds, I was just, and I called in, it was Christmas Day or something like that, I called in to work and said, I'm not coming in, I am sick. And the kids were there. Anyway, my ex-wife called and said she was going to come by, and I couldn't actually get up at that point. I had a mattress on the floor. I couldn't even stand up. And she called and said she was coming over and going to take the kids to her mother's for Christmas. I said, fine. She came over. She took the kid. I couldn't get her off the bed or off the mattress, And anyway, she took the kids for the day or whatever. And then the phone rang. And I crawled over to the phone, and it was lieutenant or whatever. Wanted to know if I'm no way why he called. He thought he was going to call, and somebody would answer, and he'd say, "I'm looking for Jim Howard," and they'd say, "Oh, Jim Howard's in Las Vegas. Went there for Christmas to play the casinos," or he was looking for something like that. Anyway, I crawled over and told him I was sick, and I would not, of course I wasn't, because I'd already called that I wouldn't come in. He wanted to know, well, are you going to be able to come in? And I said, no, So that was that. But other than that, well, a long time ago, back when the Hong Kong or whatever that was, I got whatever that was, that flu that came through 2 years in a row. I got that both times. But then after that, I really was, healthy and no problems. But then after 2000, when I went to, left Kansas City, went to Orlando, Florida, worked down there for a little bit, then went to Texas, Carrollton, Texas, and worked there at the, that was after the 9/11 attack, and so I worked security at FAA control towers for a while, and then went to Orlando, Florida for at least 5 years. Was down there, worked for a contract security company, and they put me in charge of security, which I didn't want, but they put me in charge of security at a hospital that they had the contract for, and I worked there, and that was terrible because it was a for-profit hospital. Anyway, terrible. I think I've told that story. Then I told them that I was not going to be able to be in charge of their security at that. They wanted me really bad because they didn't have anybody that had hospital. You know, they were just unbelievable that they had somebody that had, I don't know, 25 years of hospital security experience or something. But so then they just put me at different hotels, different places, you know, on the midnight shift working security. And so, okay, that was, but that was in Orlando. Yeah. So anyway, when I was in, I was working in Texas, control tower security, whatever. Then I went to Miami for over 5 years, and I worked down there. I worked security for about a year at a shopping mall, and I was sick the entire year because everybody I worked with was Hispanic. Some of them spoke very poor English. Of course, I spoke no Spanish at all. But they, you know, I'd come into work, they would shake hands. They'd be coming out of the restroom, they would shake hands to me. If I went in the bathroom and I came out, we'd come on duty, they'd be shaking hands with me. Every time you saw them, they would be shaking hands with you. They were, of course, they had family in Haiti or Puerto Rico or Venezuela or all these different, and they would, during that year, you know, go once or twice home and come back. They would come back sick. And then, of course, we switched posts, you know, for like every 2 hours. You were in a car, you were in the dispatch or whatever. The entire year I was, don't shake hands. We need to give up. We need to permanently give up all kinds of handshaking because I was sick the entire year. So it's September 4th. On September 9th, I have to go to the hospital and have I hope they don't put the thing up my nose. I hope it's a spit test or a blood test. Have to be checked for the virus because on the 15th they're going to put a new battery in for my pacemaker. Anyway, I guess the latest thing on Trump is, you know, back a couple of years ago, I think it was, maybe it was 3 years ago, it was whatever I think was the anniversary of World War II or the Normandy landing, or I forget what it was. Trump went over to Europe, I guess to France, and other leaders were there from other countries. And the story we heard then was that it was raining like hell, and Trump was supposed to go to the cemetery for American, you know, I think a couple of cemeteries for American dead over there. There's more than a couple of cemeteries, but he was supposed to go, and it was pouring down rain, and he didn't go. And the first story was that he didn't want to get out in the rain and mess up his hair. And then, of course, they released a story saying, oh, no, it was too dangerous to go because of the weather, the rainy weather, and the helicopter would have to go, and that was the reason. Now there's a story out that I get, because I'm guessing what happened was, that his staff were telling him, "Oh, you really need to go," and he says, "My hair will get wet," and they were saying, and I think his staff was saying, "But these are, this is, you need to go, these are veterans, men who were killed, and and whatever." And apparently he has said, we don't know. I mean, Trump is going to, of course, claim, probably already has, fake news. But the story is, from multiple sources, is that he said, why should I go there, though they were, what losers and something else. Some losers, and oh my God. But, like I've said here repeatedly before, that is not going, his supporters will support him. They'll believe that it's fake news, or they don't care, or he isn't going to lose any, he's already lost the people that he's going to lose, and the people like myself, who are going to vote against him, are going to vote against him, and there's nothing going to change, our positions. So, but anyway, that's the story now. This is sort of unbelievable. A white professor, female, she has pretended for her entire professional career that she is black, and I guess from time to time I read the story, that she's black, or that she is Indian, I guess American Indian, and whatever. Anyway, I forget, it's a prestigious university, and she has taught classes there, and she teaches them in whatever you call that, about. And then she has written books, I guess, from, I forget, like what it's like to be a black woman, and, to whatever. And she is not black, she's not Indian, she's just white. I'm sure that, of course, she's been doing this for, well, here's a picture of her. George Washington University. Now that's a professor of African and Latin American studies who portrayed herself as black has now revealed she is lying. I read the story, and there's like this is the story, a student is shocked. This student said that she was in various classes that were taught, and that she said that she did know that, she did notice that this woman, like, was teaching one class, and says that her family was, black or something, and that her family was from Puerto Rico. And then in another class, she said that her family was from the Dominican Republic or whatever. And this student just thought, well, I guess I'm just a little confused, or whatever. Does it tell how long? Anyway, I would guess that this person is going to lose her job. Anyway, strange. What was that movie? You're not going to see that. There was a movie that a high school graduate, a guy, was trying to get into a good college, and he couldn't get in there. So this is a made-up story, this is a movie that was not based on fact. But he came up with the idea that he would put down that he was black, and then he kind of dyed his skin or did something with, I forget what he did. And it was kind of an interesting, kind of a funny little, and then he goes there to the school, and he has to keep up that thing, and then of course he meets a black female student that he likes, and so he has to, he's pretending to be black or whatever. I bet that movie is not going to be, it's going to be a list that you don't see now. Wasn't a great movie, but it was an interesting movie. But anyway, this here isn't a student. This is a college professor. Oh, okay, here's where Trump denies that report. Trump angrily denies report that he negated U.S. service members.
So, John, President Trump is tweeting and he's talking to
President Donald Trump said on Thursday he forcibly denied a report in the Atlantic magazine that he had disparaged U.S. service members killed in battle and chose to skip a ceremony honoring veterans. Speaking to reporters after returning from a rally in Pennsylvania, the president said that the report was a disgraceful situation. And quote, to think that I would make statements negative to our military when nobody has done what I've done with the budget and the military budget. We're passing pay raises for the military. It is a disgraceful situation by a magazine that is a terrible magazine. I don't read it. Got to remember that what did Donald Trump say about Senator from Arizona, McCain, who was imprisoned, for 10 years, or I don't know how many years, and tortured and everything else. And he said repeatedly, attacked him repeatedly, McCain. Anyway, I think I said that I fill out the form to get a absentee ballot to vote. Well, not an absentee ballot. Be able to vote from home. They're the same, actually, I did use a absentee ballot to vote for the first president that I ever voted for, John F. Kennedy. I left Kansas City, Missouri, and went to Cleveland, Ohio, actually Euclid, Ohio, but it says, I think, Cleveland, to the Lincoln Welding Company, and I took welding there. And so I would not be at home in Missouri to vote, so I got a absentee ballot, and I voted from Ohio, from Euclid, Ohio. When I went there to welding school, I took the train going, and I just can't. I'm not somebody who can sleep. Well, of course, I didn't get a sleeping room or whatever. But I'm not somebody that can. Well, I don't know why, because I can. When I get behind the wheel of a vehicle to drive, I can fall asleep. But I just had trouble sleeping when I went from Kansas City, Missouri to Cleveland, Ohio, and I was exhausted. And then I went to a little motel there, and the guy said, I said, I need a room for the night, and he said, I'm going to fix you up, take good care of you, I have a good spot to put you. I said, I don't think I said anything. Fine, So he put me and went into this motel. And, well, not at the very end, because he put me like the next from the end. He put me there. And so I caved in, And then I woke up to laughing and whatever. And there was no other, the place was empty, but somebody had, so he put this young couple or whatever next to me, and they were in there doing what young couples do in motels or whatever, and I was, oh my God, And then I tried to go back to sleep. And then he put two couples into the, and they weren't there all night, you know what I mean? So he put them in, and I could hear them carrying on. And I thought, oh, this guy thinks he's doing me, but I just want to sleep. But that's what he was laughing about or whatever. I don't know, maybe he had somebody like, maybe he had somebody that would be, could you put me where there's some good stuff going on? I mean, I couldn't see anything, or I didn't try to see anything. I did peek out the window, like when I heard people coming or going or whatever. I did look out the curtain, and I could see who they were coming and going, young couples. But maybe somebody just wanted to hear that, I don't know. But I rented, through the school, I rented a room, and a lady, she rented out, I think she just rented out one room at a time. So for the time that I was there for the class, I rented out a room. And then I went and left and I ate at a sort of a bar. I'm not a drinker at all, except for Coke. And so, I mean, I'm not sure she even offered it. I mean, I just slept in the room. And that was, went to school. But I ate at a bar, and then I would drink Cokes there too, because that was my drink. But the truck drivers that delivered soda pop had gone on strike, and so I have to have Coke to live, but he drove him, the owner or whatever, drove outside of the city limits or whatever. I guess maybe, I don't know if he was able to, I wouldn't be thinking if he could get it up in the trunk of his car. Maybe he had a truck or something, I don't know, a station wagon, I don't know, but he drove out and then loaded up with Coke and brought it back, and that for his, drinks. But of course I was just buying, buying Cokes. But he treated me the same way. Of course I was buying my meals there too. But he treated me the same, like I guess, if somebody was there having a beer or highball or whatever, occasionally he would just say, that one's on the house, And he did the same for me. Every X number of, Cokes I'd buy, and then he'd just say, okay, well, that one's on the house, So, you may have noticed from the last video I mentioned about my video that I was using cheese. I'm not using cheese now. I noticed that the sink was a little bit off, so I'm using now. Went back to using the video inside of OBS. So. What else is in the news? Top doctor advises people to wear masks while having sex. I think I would just give up. Well, I have given up sex a long time ago, but just give it up till the whole virus thing's over with is what I would do. Wow, the internet, or the stock market's really down. I've talked about this repeatedly. The stock market is crazy. Things can be terrible, and the stock market can be up, and it doesn't work. The stock market should be, every day it should be down, because of the situation we're in with, the virus and, businesses not being able to open, and I mentioned this in the last video that Google Maps has rolled out one of its most requested features, and that's color, I guess. So, I think here, hang on, Google, where is Google Maps? Oh, I gotta go here. Google Maps, okay. Okay, that's not showing. Let's see, what do I have to, because I showed it. Oh, I think I have to do this, go to the satellite view. There we are. This is Fort Worth, Texas. Not sure why we're getting music, but oh look, we still have the United States Postal Service. I actually worked for the post office for a short period of time. I took the uh, selective service physical or selective service test and passed it. And they hired in 200 people. They hadn't hired in.
A bold announcement from Google sends rumblings through workplaces across America. The tech giant's CEO, in a memo,
The post office had, back then, I took the post office civil service exam. I don't think I heard from them for like a year or more because the federal government the Congress kept putting freezes on hiring because that was a big thing back then. Democrats and Republicans, especially, the Republicans were pushing more than the Democrats, would cave on it. It was like, no, the Republicans, even back then, wanted everything privatized. And so I applied for the post office. They put a freeze on hiring. Then I just come back from a job in Convent, Louisiana, building a refinery down there. And when I got back, I had a bag of mail for all the time I've been gone because I didn't owe anything. I wasn't married, and I didn't, everything I bought cash or whatever, except I bought a few things on credit, which I paid ahead of time, which confused them because I was just trying to establish credit. But anyway, I came back from Convent, Louisiana, and it said report Monday. This was a Friday. Report Monday morning. So I went down. They hired in 200 of us, and I was number 200. When you take the test, they score it, and then if you are a veteran, you get, I don't know, 5 or 10 points extra on your score. If you're a disabled veteran or something, you got, I don't know, 5 points more. If you saw combat or something, I get, whatever. Anyway, I was like number 200. And so then hired in. And then about 2 weeks later, I think it was 2 weeks, maybe it was a month. I don't think so. I think it was like 200. 2 weeks later, I think, they hired in 200 more. And then 2 weeks later, or if it was maybe a month, they hired in 200 more. And then about that time, I just quit, which they couldn't believe. This is a career civil service appointment. Nobody quit. I said, where do I sign? But probably wasn't too smart of me. But I didn't really know, like when I hired in, they said, okay, well, they had a whole list of things that you had to sign off, and like there was a thing that was multiple pages, and it was organizations. I remember one was like the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, and you had to go through this list, when they were doing this hiring in. Have you ever been a member of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade? No. Have you ever been a member of the Communist Party of the United States? No. Have you ever, and that kind of pissed me off because I knew about the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. It was before the United States got into World War II, when Spain, was and Hitler was helping Spain, and so the Nazis were helping Spain, sort of testing out their equipment too. Gave them the opportunity to test out their things. And here in the United States, communist and liberals and socialists and whatever, they formed a group of Americans to go over and to help the anti-Nazi people in Spain in their civil war. And of course, a lot of people who weren't communist or leftists or whatever also believed in, realized that, hey, this war needs to, the Nazis need to be stopped. And so they went with the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. But if you, and then of course later World War II starts and we're on the side of, the USSR, we're on the side of, but then when that ended, if you, it's just, it's just so fucking crazy, the whole thing. But then too, when I hired in at the post office, they said, okay, well, the way you advance here is through schemes. And scheme, okay, I know what the word scheme, that's where you do something to, you have a plan here where you're scheming, But I never heard of it being used in that regard. And what it was that no matter what you wanted to do in the post office, like when the 200 of us hired in Kansas City, Missouri, at the main post office, our thing was we sorted mail for California. And then it was bagged up and, sent to California. That came through Kansas City, but then at some point after you'd been there a while and after you had some seniority or whatever, if you wanted to be doing something else, you had to learn that thing, that scheme, and then test, and then you had to have more seniority than the person, and then so. Anyway, I said, I never heard of scheme. What, you never heard of it? But I guess one of the things was, like I said, they hired in 200 of us at a time. So they hired in 200 of us. Okay, you have 30 minutes for lunch. And so I went to the cafeteria. Now remember, I had been welder, Boilermakers, United Auto Workers, all this kind of stuff, union. So anyway, I go to the cafeteria and I'm in the line with my tray. And 30 minutes are up, and these people, the other 199, well, maybe some of them might have got in that line ahead of me, whatever. But the other 199, they went back to work. And I was in the line with my tray, and then I sat down at the table, and then I looked at my watch. Okay, 30 minutes starts now. And actually, I wasn't a real asshole. I've been here 25 minutes, or even maybe 20 minutes or something. It's going to take me 5 minutes to walk back, so I'd head on back. But I'd come back, and it would be like, people would be like looking at me. This is before the thing like going postal, where a postal employee shoots people and that kind of stuff. But I'd go back, and it'd be like, people would be looking at me like, something's wrong with this guy. Something is definitely wrong with this guy. Nobody said anything, but so I eventually quit. I had some good jobs, the welding jobs, but I should not have been working as a welder because of my hearing loss. Like one of the first jobs, not the first welding job, but one of the jobs I had was in a plant. I worked there for a year. I worked exactly a year. I quit on my anniversary date. Railroad cars came in and they were cut, and then you had the backbone of the thing and all that kind of stuff, and then we rebuilt. We made new, railroad cars out of coal haulers mainly, although they had cabooses. They made a few cabooses there. But it was noisy, of course. And with my hearing loss, I can remember the superintendent coming over for more than once for some reason to tell me something. I want you to go over here and work on this or do that. And he's in front of me and he's telling, talking. And my problem was, you think somebody who has hearing problem, well, they can't hear you because you're not speaking loud enough or something like that. I had hearing loss in different in each ear, bad in both ears, or whatever. And if there had been no noise, I could have heard what the superintendent was saying. But my problem was, and kind of hard to explain to people unless maybe somebody or you have it, But my problem was I was hearing all the noise. Everything was coming in. My brain couldn't do the switching that would say, okay, this is this person right in front of you speaking, so we're turning down the volume on these other things so you can hear this person. The superintendent would end up screaming in my ear, and no way. The only way I could hear him would be, and the whole place was noisy, would have been, I think maybe he wrote me a note, I forget now, but we would have had to go step outside or something. Then I could have heard him, but, so, anyway, thank you very much for, let's see, what's coming up? I swear, I'm going to try less political stuff. I wish I could positively not talk about politics. Just vote and not talk about it. I know you don't want to hear about politics, and I don't want to hear about it, but I do. I've been doing this since 1982, blogging, and that's what I do is I talk about, whether it's in written form or live streaming videos or whatever I've done over the years. This is what you get, whatever's on my mind. When I was working, it was sometimes about work and problems at work, and actually here's, I printed, here's the grievances that I wrote up and the outcome of it. And then when my wife wanted the divorce or whatever, that's what I was talking about, and when stuff, so, what you see is what you get, unfortunately. Thank you very much for watching and listening.